Welcome back to Chris Brooks, the channel where we cut through the noise and break down the world's most consequential conflicts in the clearest, most direct, and most honest way possible. If you are new here, now is the right time to be part of this conversation, because today we are covering a story that the rest of the world's attention has almost entirely missed. While everyone has been fixated on the United States obliterating Iran, Ukraine has been operating quietly. And yet, not quietly at all. Completely under the radar. As Iran burns, Ukraine has been ripping open Russia's belly with a series of devastating, calculated strikes, targeting the very last things keeping Russia functional in this war. Russia's air defenses have been proving just as useless for itself as they proved to be for Iran. And Ukraine has been making that point with brutal, undeniable clarity. Taking out target after target in a campaign of relentless, systematic destruction that the world is only now beginning to fully appreciate. Let us start with the number that should stop you dead in your tracks. 105,200 Russian targets. That is the number of targets that the commander-in-chief of Ukraine's armed forces, Oleksandr Syrsky, confirmed that Ukraine struck across the 28 days of February 2026 alone. Let that number sit with you for a moment, because the scale is almost difficult to process. Break it down, and you arrive at roughly 3,750 targets every single day. And that figure alone tells you everything you need to understand about how drone-heavy, relentless, and strategically disciplined Ukraine's campaign has become. Ukraine hit virtually everything Russia had to offer during that month. We are going to walk through some of the most critical strikes from March as well, because that will show you just how vast and ambitious Ukraine's target list has grown. But before we get to March, there is one specific category of target that Ukraine tackled in February that deserves its own spotlight, because it is the single most important pressure point keeping Putin's forces able to maintain their offensive momentum on the ground. Pilot positions. Russia's drones play an enormous and often underappreciated supporting role for Putin's ground forces. Long-range Shahed-type attack drones hammer Ukraine's cities and military infrastructure deep in the rear areas, draining morale across the entire country and severing the supply lines that Ukrainian troops at the front depend on to survive and fight. And on the front itself, Russia deploys FPV and reconnaissance drones, not as skillfully or effectively as Ukraine, but still consistently enough to run raids, gather intelligence, and establish kill zones that Ukrainian forces cannot safely move through. The beating heart of Russia's drone operation is not the drones themselves, it is the pilots. And Ukraine figured out in February that the most efficient way to neutralize that drone campaign was not to keep swatting at arrows flying through the air one by one. It was to start hunting the archers standing on the ground. As Syrsky made plain, it would be physically impossible for Ukraine to intercept and destroy every FPV drone Russia deploys on the front. In a Telegram post detailing the February strike statistics, he stated, "The Ukrainian Defense Forces continue to hold the advantage in the use of multi-rotor FPV drones, although the Russians have already acquired the ability to produce over 19,000 FPV drones per day." If that figure is accurate, and there is no reason to believe it is not, it represents a staggering escalation, far beyond the roughly 2 million FPV drones Russia was believed to have manufactured across all of 2025, which worked out to approximately 5,500 drones per day. At that production rate, defeating Russia's FPV threat by targeting the drones individually is not just inefficient, it is strategically futile. But targeting the human beings operating those drones? That is an entirely different equation, and it is the equation Ukraine chose to solve. Even the most sophisticated FPV drone on Earth still needs a person behind the controller to guide it to its target. Eliminate a pilot position, and you do not take one drone out of service. You take every drone that operator was managing out of the fight simultaneously. Hundreds, potentially thousands, rendered idle and useless. And when Ukraine executes those strikes with precision, it is not just positions that are lost. Pilots go down at their stations, and Russia has to scramble to find, recruit, train, and redeploy replacements. That scramble burns time, money, and organizational focus Russia cannot afford to spend. Russia has been doing everything in its power to build up its drone pilot corps as fast as possible. Syrskyi confirmed that Russia is actively planning to expand its unmanned systems military personnel to 101,000 members by April the 1st. That single number tells you how deeply drone warfare has become embedded in Russia's entire military strategy. And one of Ukraine's most consequential achievements in February was the psychological message delivered to every Russian drone operator running equipment well behind the combat lines. The message was simple and devastating. You are not safe. Ukraine knows where you are. And Ukraine can remove you and your entire drone network from this war at the same time. Audience question number 1. Now I want to stop here for a moment, because this raises a question I genuinely want to hear your thoughts on. Drop your answer in the comments below. Here it is. Do you think Ukraine's pivot toward targeting drone pilots rather than the drones themselves is the single smartest tactical adjustment of this war so far? Or do you think Russia will adapt quickly enough, maybe by dispersing its operators further or accelerating automation, to absorb those losses? I read every comment that comes through, and I want to know exactly where you stand on this. Back to the story. A very similar strategic logic applies when you look at the long-range drone front. When Russia's Shahed drones come up in conversation, the natural instinct is to picture them being launched exclusively from deep inside Russian territory. Many of them are. But one of the most significant advantages Russia gains from occupying large stretches of Ukrainian land is the ability to launch Shahed drones from positions far closer to their intended targets. A drone launched from occupied Crimea, from Luhansk, or from Donetsk covers far less ground than one launched from hundreds of kilometers inside Russia. Less distance means less time for Ukrainian air defenses to detect, track, and engage the incoming threat. Less time means a smaller window for mechanical failure or navigational error. All of that compounds into a meaningfully higher probability that the drone reaches its destination. And this is a problem Ukraine must confront directly. Taking out more than 4,000 pilot positions in a single month is one of the most decisive tools available for doing exactly that. On the production side, Russia was manufacturing 30,000 Shahed-type attack drones per year by September 2025, according to United 24 Media, and had announced plans to double that output. By January, RBC Ukraine was reporting on Syrskyi's warning that Russia's stated ambition is to sustain a launch capacity of 1,000 attack drones aimed at Ukraine per single day. Russia has not reached that threshold yet. The escalating conflict with Iran may have complicated Putin's production timeline, given that Iran had likely been supplying key components for Russia's domestic Shahed assembly lines. Even so, the scale of Russia's drone campaign remains severe. That same February saw Russia launch 5,059 long-range drones, a 13% increase over January, and break its own record for missile launches, which we will return to shortly. But staying with the drone picture, what Ukraine was doing in February was the methodical, focused dismantling of the heart of Russia's drone operation. Yes, Ukraine still destroyed enormous numbers of drones and related hardware. But the critical insight, the strategic breakthrough, was recognizing that the archers matter more than the arrows. Arrows do not fly without archers. They do not fly without bows. Add that to the 100,000 additional targets destroyed, equipment, troop concentrations, command and control nodes, logistics infrastructure, and you have a picture of Russian combat power being ground down from the inside out at a pace the Kremlin has no answer for. Now, Let us move into March, with the backbone of its drone operation under sustained and serious pressure. Russia might have hoped for at least a brief pause. It did not get one. Ukraine did not slow down, did not ease off, and did not give the Kremlin a single day to recover. Strike after strike, Ukraine continued tearing into Russia's rear infrastructure, frontline logistics, and air defense network throughout the first 12 days of March. What follows here is just a portion of that campaign, but even a fraction of it is enough to show you the ambition and precision of what Ukraine is executing. Start with air defenses. On March the 12th, the Kyiv Post published a statement from Robert Brovdy, head of Ukraine's unmanned systems forces. He confirmed that between March the 1st and March the 12th, just 12 days, Ukraine had destroyed 19 elements of Russia's air defense network, including an S-300 system and one of Russia's Tor surface-to-air missile units. The Tor system was eliminated near Berdyansk, in Russia-occupied Zaporizhzhia. Known to NATO as the SA-15 Gauntlet, this Soviet-era system was built to intercept helicopters, aircraft, and cruise missiles at short range. Russia has long promoted the Tor as a reliable counter to Ukraine's drone threat. The fact that Ukrainian drones destroyed it is as direct a rebuttal to that claim as you can get. A system costing an estimated $25 to $27 million was eliminated by the very threat it was supposed to defeat. The S-300 Ukraine destroyed was stationed in occupied Luhansk, near a settlement called Borovenki. The S-300 provides mobile air defense coverage to Russia's troop formations and key military installations, handling a wider range of aerial threats than the Tor, including some ballistic missile scenarios. But it is also a system Ukraine has been targeting consistently for 4 years. The March 12th strike was simply the latest chapter in a long, deliberate campaign to dismantle Russia's air defense architecture, one system at a time. This is a good moment to say, if you have not yet subscribed to Chris Brooks, do it now. Hit that subscribe button, because everything we are covering today is the foundation for a much bigger story that is still developing, and you want to be here when it arrives. Why is Ukraine so committed to taking out Russia's air defenses? According to Ukraine's own tracking, 1,332 Russian air defense systems have been destroyed from the start of the war through March the 14th. The strategic goal behind every one of those strikes is the same: carve open safe aerial corridors so that Ukraine's long-range weapons can reach their targets without being intercepted. Euromaidan Press revealed in December that Russia's air defenses were successfully intercepting approximately 90% of the drones and missiles Ukraine fired at them. That is a formidable rate. But it also means 10% of Ukraine's strikes are landing. And Ukraine looks at the 90% being stopped and asks a straightforward question. What changes when we bring that interception rate down? What does this war look like if 20% of our long-range strikes land? 30? Every additional percentage point of penetration translates directly into more of Russia's war-sustaining infrastructure being destroyed. The target list is extensive: drone pilot positions, oil refineries, fuel storage, ammunition depots, rail yards, command nodes, everything that keeps Russia's military functioning. The more of those assets Ukraine degrades, the faster pressure compounds on Russia's front line. Sanctions have accelerated this dynamic significantly. Both Euromaidan Press and the Kyiv Post have documented Russia's inability to manufacture replacement air defense systems at anything close to the rate Ukraine is destroying them. Russia cannot source the components required to keep its assembly lines running. The resulting supply chain failure has trapped Russia in an impossible choice: strip air defenses from positions inside Russia and move them to the front, leaving Russian territory exposed, or leave the gaps Ukraine creates open and accept the vulnerabilities that follow. The Kyiv Post went further, concluding that Russia is just one well-placed strike or one precisely targeted sanction away from losing the ability to produce S-400 systems entirely. If that happens, a defining pillar of Russia's aerial defense architecture stops production permanently. Either path leads to the same outcome for Ukraine. Corridors open, more strikes land. More Russian infrastructure gets taken off the board. The math is relentless, and it runs in one direction. And all of that strategic convergence now points to one final strike. Arguably, the most consequential thing Ukraine has done in this entire phase of the conflict. Earlier in March, Russia launched another combined missile and drone assault against Kharkiv. That has become a grim routine of this war. But what set this particular attack apart was the weapon Russia used. A missile designated the Izdelia-30. It carries a range of 1,500 kilometers, 932 miles, and delivers approximately 800 kilograms of explosive payload, equivalent to roughly 1,763 pounds. According to United 24 Media, Russia has been launching these missiles from Su-34 fighter jets operating inside its own territory, which makes the launch platform extremely difficult for Ukraine to target. This is a genuinely new and serious threat. Ukraine's response arrived on March the 10th. Ukrainian forces struck the Krymny L microelectronics plant in Russia's Bryansk region using Storm Shadow missiles, long-range, precision-guided weapons supplied by the United Kingdom. 7 of those missiles hit the plant's main production facility. Post-strike assessments strongly indicate that Krymny L has been put out of operation. And with it, Russia has lost its ability to manufacture the Izdelia-30 because the specialized microelectronics at the core of that missile's guidance systems are produced at Krymny L, and only at Krymny L. This is not simply a battlefield strike. This is the precise, deliberate destruction of the industrial brain producing one of Russia's most dangerous new offensive weapons. Ukraine did not just respond to the threat of the Izdelia-30. It found the factory that builds the threat and erased it. And this strike carries a lesson that extends far beyond Ukraine's immediate situation. Western nations that have provided Ukraine with long-range weapons must continue authorizing their use against legitimate military and industrial targets inside Russia. The Krymny L strike is proof of exactly what becomes possible when that authorization is maintained. Heart, belly, brain. Ukraine has struck all 3 pillars of Russia's war machine in this phase of the conflict. Colonel Yuri Inat, head of the communications department of the Ukrainian Air Force, provided the essential framing on March the 9th when he said, "The enemy is using more ballistic missiles in 2025 and 2026. We had massive strikes. There were about 12.5 during the winter. And we see that the use of missiles flying on ballistic trajectories has increased significantly." Russia confirmed that with action. In February, it launched 288 missiles into Ukraine, a volume not seen since 2023, according to United 24 Media, averaging more than 10 per day. Russia intended to lean harder on its missile arsenal as 2026 progressed. That was the plan, before Ukraine destroyed the factory. Stack the loss of Krymny L on top of everything else. Over 105,000 targets struck in February, more than 4,000 pilot positions eliminated, 19 air defense components destroyed in the first 12 days of March, a fuel and lubricants train wiped out in occupied Luhansk, an ammunition warehouse neutralized, an artillery repair unit taken down, and you are looking at one of the most consequential periods of sustained battlefield degradation in this entire war. Ukraine's message to the world is clear. Keep your attention on Iran if you like. We will keep dismantling Russia's war machine, piece by systematic piece. Audience question number 2. And that brings me to my second question for today. Think carefully before you answer, and leave your response in the comments. Given everything Russia has lost over these past 6 weeks, production lines, pilots, air defenses, logistics infrastructure, and now the manufacturing base for its newest missile, do you believe Russia still has the industrial and operational capacity to sustain this war through the end of 2026? Or has Ukraine already crossed a strategic threshold that Russia simply cannot come back from? Leave your honest, considered take below. The conversation in this comments section is one of the best on this entire platform, and your voice belongs in it. What we are witnessing is not a war measured in frontline shifts alone. It is a war of competing industrial capacities, strategic depth, and the grinding attrition of entire military ecosystems. Ukraine grasps this at a fundamental level, and it is demonstrating that understanding through its actions, strike by strike, position by position, factory by factory, proving that the side which truly comprehends the deeper game is the side that ultimately controls the outcome. The strikes will go deeper. The hits will land harder. Ukraine has been quietly building something entirely new, a capability never before seen in the history of modern warfare, one that does not just bend the rules of what aerial campaigns can achieve, but rewrites them completely. When the full story of that capability comes to light, everything covered today will be the essential foundation for understanding why it changes this war at its core. Make sure you are subscribed to Chris Brooks, so you are present when that story arrives. Drop your thoughts, your analysis, and your reactions in the comments. Whether it is your answer to today's questions, your read on where this war is heading, or simply what stood out most to you. This community is one of the most thoughtful and engaged ones on this platform, and every comment shapes what we cover next. Until next time, stay sharp, stay informed, and I will see you in the next one.